What did a professional say or do that made you immediately lose trust in them? A plumber in the middle of a job that had to drive back to the shop to get a part that was pretty basic, and then charged for the time it took, and then installed it incorrectly, and then returned a week later to fix the mistake and asked what idiot installed it that way, and then installed it an entirely new, wrong way. Story 2. I'd repeatedly gone to my GP about this nagging pain in my arm. He did some blood work to check for vitamin deficiency and sent me for an x-ray which didn't show anything. He then decided my pain must be because I was an anxious female. On my last visit I mentioned I'd also been struggling with breathing properly and had some chest pain, and I was starting to get quite concerned. He just said, "You're anxious, but what do you have to be anxious about? You have a husband with a good job," and sent me on my way with a prescription for Zoloft. 2 days later, I was in the ER, being diagnosed with a pulmonary embolism, and now I have a new doctor. This is an incredibly incompetent doctor. Now, on this channel in particular, we hear about a lot of incompetent doctors, or doctors that make mistakes, because it happens. This is just borderline negligence, in my opinion. Sir, you are helping no one. Or, at the very least, not OP. Story 3. When I was a teenager in high school, I really wanted to apply for an astronomy camp program that summer. You needed a letter of recommendation from a math or science teacher. My higher grade was in chemistry, so I asked her, and she said she would. But I should be aware that she would say that I don't always focus on my work as I should. I said, fine, that was true. And then I worked really hard on the rest of the application, and I got in. Ran to school in excitement to thank my teacher for her letter, and she couldn't hide her look of utter astonishment. A few months later, when at that camp, I nonchalantly asked the director, "So she wrote me a bad letter, didn't she?" He immediately pulled me aside to say yes. It was so bad that it was a full page saying terrible things about my character and scholarship. So he knew he had to discount it, but wanted to let me know. Which was, in fact, good to know, because I had AP chemistry with her the next year, and she kept doing stuff like getting me sent to the principal's office for a B- at the quarter. That still bothers me to this day. I was your classic bright but bored kid and was obsessed with astronomy. And any educator worth their salt knows a kid who can't get a good grade in chemistry class can thrive at a summer program. But if she didn't want to write me a letter, she could just say no. Spending all that time writing a bad one? Pretty low thing to do to a teenager. Edit. As some are asking, I am actually an astronomer today. Screw that teacher. And yes, I'm still in touch with the camp director today. And I even work as a counselor some years when my schedule allows it. Edit 2. As many are saying, if you ever need to ask for a recommendation letter, it's best to meet in person and ask the teacher/prof for a strong recommendation letter and see their reaction. I will, however, point out I was 15 at the time. I'd never asked for a letter before, and I don't think teenagers are known for getting that level of subtlety. Edit 3. The same year I graduated, said teacher moved to New Jersey. I don't know where, and she had a very generic name, so no, I can't contact her or the employer. And I've no reason to believe she isn't still teaching students today, unfortunately. Yeah, this one's pretty cut and dry. If you're an educator and you go out of your way to sabotage actively a student, you're just a bad educator. That simple. Story 4. I was looking to hire an editor for one of my books last year. She corrected my grammar in the email I sent her, quite politely, I have to say. I think she thought it was some kind of audition piece. But she was just factually wrong about the mistake. I think it was the use of a colon instead of a semicolon. When I sent her a link to a couple of web pages that showed that actually the way I typed it was correct, she doubled down. She got extremely snippy with me and basically came back with, "You're hiring me to do a job, so I know better than you." Excuse me? I've done your job in the past. I know editing is a skill and deserves respect, but I'm paying you because I don't want to do it, not because I can't. Either way, she didn't get hired. Finding a decent editor's hard, man. Story 5. I took a job that sounded ideal on paper, but the CEO who I reported to gave off some bad vibes very quickly. A lot of decisions he made were questionable at best. He wanted me to play clips from The Wolf of Wall Street to motivate the team, but as soon as he told me he was altering people's targets midway through the month and withholding bonuses from certain team members, I was out of there. I was in the job for exactly 1 month, and on a Tuesday morning I got into work and told him that I couldn't morally do it, and that if that was his decision, I didn't want to be a part of it. 2 minutes later, I silently collected my things and left feeling literally over the moon for doing so. Story 6. When a career motivator had a chat with me asking what I wanted to do for the future. By the way, I'm 18, about to apply for uni. I said, mechanical engineering. But I didn't hold on the it was just the natural you fit into any sentence. He then said in the most overconfident, condescending manner, "Nope, you stuttered, therefore you're not sure and this is not a career for you. Look elsewhere, son." Aw, gee, thanks, mystical man. I'm just drop my plans for the next 40 years of my life over a stutter. Oh, by the way, I made it into my dream uni for a mechanical engineering degree, so screw you, basic YouTube motivational channel copycat idiot. The stumbling at the end there is me trying to find words to replace paraphrase what OP actually said. It wasn't anything like super bad, but just like not quite advertiser friendly. Basically, yeah, just screw him is what he was saying. And fair enough, OP. Story 7. I had something similar to the last story. When we were selecting our 2-week work experience assignments, the guy who did it assigning for my school was like, "What are you interested in doing?" I responded I wanted to be involved in music. I was in a band and was very interested in recording studios, practice rooms, venues, anything that gave me an insight at 15. He responded, "Oh, okay, well, I've got 1 recording studio slot and a couple of music venues in town." "Great," says I. "Any of those would be perfect. I'm excited to learn how it all works." He then goes, "But music is extremely hard to get into. We're not going to make you Michael Jackson by sending you to a music venue for a couple of weeks." I basically said something like, I would still like to see it all. I didn't necessarily want to be a musician. I just liked the industry and wanted to see a different side of it from what I'd already seen. I'd only played guitar in a punk band that had played a few shows at this point, so I had no idea how music functioned outside of turning up to a show and making loud noises. Maybe I'd be interested in running a venue or recording other bands or something. He then says, and I still remember, word for word, "No, there's no point in that. You need to be setting up for the real world." And then made me work in a frickin' shoe store for 2 weeks. It broke my heart and affected me more than I think I realized at the time. It's 16 years later, and I still remember it as the first time someone essentially told me, "You're never going to amount to anything, so don't even try." I never got my band big or toured the world playing music. I spent a couple of years touring the UK, where I'm from, in small pop punk bands. I worked in a cinema for a long time, and now I work in a crappy office job. I always wonder if things had been a bit different and this guy had been a bit more encouraging, if things would have turned out differently. Like, would I have pushed myself further, not having that sentiment in the back of my mind? Edit. A lot of people are asking, so to clarify, I did go on to play music. And we weren't Green Day successful or anything, but we still did relatively alright, and we had a frickin' blast doing it. My most recent band split up a few weeks ago, and I'm working on something new with them. Story 8. I broke my arm and went into an orthopedic office. I didn't like them from the first appointment because I had an appointment and they made me wait for 2 hours. Then they had their secretary take my past medical history, which is extremely complex, in the waiting room. On a follow-up appointment, the tech removed my cast. PA came in to assess my arm and went to my non-broken arm. Assessed strength and range of motion and swelling, told me it seemed to be healing nicely. I told her, great, since that one was never broken. Once she finished repeating the process on the arm that was actually broken, she sent the tech in to recast my arm. I had to stop the tech from casting my non-broken arm. On my appointment paperwork, she wrote that she recommended I take ibuprofen for pain relief. That was exactly 2 sentences after, where it stated NSAIDs like ibuprofen cause life-threatening airway swelling in me. Same office wanted to charge me $50 every visit to sign a form that was literally 1 checkbox, saying if I was cleared or not for full duty at work. 1 checkbox, no research required. I never went back. Story 9. About 20 years ago, I had a well-known nurse practitioner who was married to one of the doctors in the practice. I had developed a weird combination of symptoms along with a silent strep infection. Anyway, she came in telling me about people she knew, giving first and last names and asking if I knew them, and telling me about their strep infections and symptoms and stuff. That was the last time I made an appointment with her. I knew it was straight up illegal to talk about other people's medical conditions, and it made me wonder who she told about mine. Horrible, horrible woman who thought she was untouchable because she was well off and married to a doctor. Ah yes, this silly woman, because as we learned from the first story, being married to a man with a stable job only cures anxiety. Of course, doesn't make her untouchable. What a fool. Seriously though, this sounds like some serious HIPAA violations. I hope at some point she does get the book thrown at her, because these rules are very important and I'm pretty sure they go above a well-known doctor. Story 10. I figured out pretty quickly that I didn't like my driving instructor, but other people's horror stories about changing made me stick with him. 6 months of lessons being told off for minor errors and having the test dangled in front of me but just out of reach, he finally said to me, "I just don't think you're going to be able to drive a manual car." He said this knowing full well that I had already bought a manual car, because I didn't expect to be learning for so long. He wrecked my confidence in driving, and it took me another 6 months to try again. My new instructor then had to correct all the bad habits the first guy taught me. He had no issue with my use of gears at all, and I passed first attempt. Screw you, Nick. Story 11. You need a diet of 1,000 calories split into 5 small meals. No fat at all, and you need to do some video trainings with Mel B. Quote from professional and certified sport dietitian, whom I visited because I wanted to have a professional weightlifting training plan and diet. Stupid me actually tried to follow it for 3 months and stopped it after fainting several times during the day. Edit, some clarification. This happened around early 2010s in Poland. Turned out you don't need any certification to call yourself a dietitian here, or at least there wasn't any back then. I was a petite girl who loves running with no weight problem at all, and just wanted to find someone to introduce me to weightlifting. There were more red flags I skipped because I was young and naive, such as the dietitian office location in a shady part of town, weird food restrictions like you're only allowed 100 grams of meat per day, no eggs at all, no bread at all, no fruits at all, but if you need to make a cheat meal because you need to take your customers for a business lunch, then fine, eat whatever but no carbs, followed by some motivational BS. I remember I lost around 3 kgs in the first week, and then the weight loss stopped. I gained 2 kgs back and was able to lose it again on a rational reduction diet made by an actual professional clinical dietitian I visited later. Story 12. It was a doctor at a pediatric hospital. I was 16 and suffering from joint pain. Undiagnosed Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Not rare, but not super common either. The doctor came in and asked to see how flexible I was. He pulled on my arm and it dislocated from the shoulder pretty easily. Ow, but that wasn't the bad part. The bad part was the way he immediately laughed and ran outside to call the other doctors and nurses in with, "Hey, look at what this one could do." They all ran in and he proceeded to, without asking me, locate and dislocate my arm repeatedly while giggling. It was mortifying and demeaning. I got in the car and cried afterwards. I didn't get my diagnosis there despite having every hallmark of EDS. All he did was embarrass and hurt me for a laugh. I didn't just stop trusting him, I stopped trusting basically every member of the medical profession, since all those people just came in to stare at me and to laugh. I got my diagnosis a few months later from a much kinder, more gentle doctor who was horrified when I told this story. Now, you may be thinking, narrator, that was a strange voice for a doctor, but I read the story ahead a little bit and was like, wow, what a piece of garbage. I bet he sounds exactly like this. That's all I can imagine a doctor who would do something like that to sound like. And yeah, OP, it doesn't surprise me that the doctor you talked to afterwards was shocked when you told him this story. I think any reasonable person, doctor or not, would be horrified at that. I'm so sorry. Story 13. I took my kids to a local optician for years. I queried a few times with them about glasses, as I felt they couldn't see very well as they were getting older. Some glasses were given, but they were only to wear them if they absolutely had to. Cue my kids not wearing them hardly at all. The advice was, this would strengthen their eyes and hopefully reverse their short-sightedness. Took them to the races. They could not see a thing. What horses were running, boards with winners' placings on, etc. Took them straight to a new optician who immediately gave them glasses and contact lenses for permanent use, and was horrified by the old optician's advice. Apparently your eyes get worse if you don't wear glasses when you're short-sighted. Not better. I still don't understand how they were managing at school. Story 14. Maybe not a professional in the strictest sense of the word, but my driving instructor. In Canada, insurance for young drivers is through the roof, but you get a good discount for taking a driver's ed course that pays for itself within 2 years. So you're basically nuts if you're a young man and don't sign up for the full course even if you know how to drive. My instructor was a pretty intimidating dude who knew what he was doing, except for one thing. He said, "Do what I tell you to do, but don't do what I do." So for the first part of the first exercise on the way to the initial lessons in an open parking lot, he proceeded to drive without a seatbelt, with one hand on the wheel, not signaling his turns, and breaking speed limits everywhere. If I didn't already have a pretty good idea how to drive, it would have scared the hell out of me, but it definitely cost him my trust. Story 15. I was in a bad place. Without a job for a long period, depression and just feeling terrible. Went to a place that was recommended I go to if I was feeling like I was going to do something drastic. Went and met a person, cried in front of them explaining all my troubles, that I couldn't find a job and I was wanting to harm myself. The person told me she didn't know what I wanted her to do. Like, excuse me? I just wanted to feel some personal connection to another person, maybe some help. But I didn't say that though, I just got up and left. Walked home, which took like 3 hours, crying the whole way. I'm doing okay now, in some programs and stuff, but I still don't really trust that the people around me have my best interest at heart. Honestly, I've lost faith in the whole healthcare field in my country, which says that it's good, but not really. Not for this stuff. Story 16. I, 17 at the time, have had a long history of migraines, and recently came down with some pretty severe vitamin D deficiency, which for some reason caused my migraines to come back after 4 years of having them under control. So I went with my mom to a neurologist. Our appointment was at 1:30, and my mom had a haircut appointment later at 5:30. So we get to the neurologist's office at 1 to fill out paperwork and stuff. We aren't called back until 4. When we get into the office, the doctor takes another 45 minutes to even show up. When he does, he isn't apologetic at all. He starts saying, based on your file, what you're experiencing probably aren't migraines, and aren't a problem at all. Right off the bat, we could tell he's an arrogant jerk. After a few, about 15 minutes of him questioning me and writing off my symptoms as coincidence, what the hell, my mom says, "Look, we waited hours to see you and I've got other plans to get to tonight. Are you actually going to be helpful?" To which the doctor responds to by harassing my mom into telling him what other plans she has. She says a haircut. Listen, woman, what's more important, your hair or your son's life? Considering the fact that he'd been completely disregarding everything I was telling him about my headaches, it was pretty apparent my life didn't matter to him. Needless to say, we won't be going back. Story 17. This one is more about my mother losing trust in a physician than me. When I was a kid, maybe around the age of 8, I was allergic to red food coloring. Red dye 40 specifically, but I avoided them all. If I came into contact with it, my face and throat would swell up, my skin would itch, and my temperature would go up. Back before we knew what was causing this, my mom took me to several different doctors to figure out what was up. The one I remember had me take several allergy tests, cut dairy out of my diet for 2 months, and take cold medication for that time. All to turn around out of the blue and say, it's because she's getting ready to start her cycle. What in the hell kind of theory is that? My face and throat are swelling because I'm about to get my period? Yeah, seems legit. We didn't go back to that doctor. My mom figured out what I was allergic to on her own by recording everything I ate for 2 weeks. Good job, Mom. And had her observation verified by a less wandering womb-type physician. I didn't start menstruating until 6 years later. In case that doctor sees this and wants to know, I randomly quit being allergic to red dye when I was 12, at least in a severe way. Don't take your kids to doctors who blame something that acts like a peanut allergy on their menstrual cycle. Story 18. My car insurance company had an agent who reviewed my policy with me, and while trying to get me to sign up on life insurance, wanted me to get an amount that would pay off my student loans and have my parents set for life. My parents. She refused to listen even when I told her nobody even co-signed my loans, and I have no contact with my financially comfortable, abusive, healthy parents. I ended up writing a long email to the company, including wondering if they no longer wanted me as a customer. I mean, aren't insurance companies always trying to upsell? Is that the right term here? Upsell you? I don't know. I feel like insurance companies always try to get you to sign up for more than you have to, though, because that's how they make money. By you signing up and then you being wrong about needing it. Maybe I have the wrong idea about insurance, but it seems very weird to me. So maybe I'm not the most qualified to talk about this. Moving on. Story 19. Knee surgeon. Already had loads of consultations. Had some pretty nasty ligament ruptures. Knew it was serious, but my doctor, who's one of the best knee surgeons in Europe, was great and calming, and we talked over all the possibilities. One day I had to talk with another of his surgeons, and he flat out told me I wouldn't ski again, run properly, and loads of other stuff. I was furious, as I hadn't been told anything like this in the 6 months prior to speaking to this guy. Safe to say, when I spoke to my actual doctor, I made sure the second doctor wasn't to be a part of my operation or anything. Everything went well, and 6 years later it has never hindered me since. Story 20. Asked property management about the ongoing efforts to get rid of German cockroaches at my apartment. We legit pay a couple bucks a month for pest control, as does every other apartment in the 11-building complex. 4 to 16 units per building based on unit type. This should be a fairly standard type of interaction for these folks, since I live in the south and roaches are common in our area. Dude lied to my face about the 3 other units in my building receiving regular treatment. Buddy, I'm unemployed right now. I smoke outside, and as such, I see a fair amount of what goes on here, and I'm friendly with my neighbors. In the 3 months we've been getting half-hearted pest control treatments, none of the other units in my building have been treated once. That's when I figured they don't actually give a damn, and started just submitting work order requests for every little thing that they've got to account to their bosses for. If y'all don't want to help, fine. But your bosses are going to wonder what the hell is going on when they get notifications from your system about work orders left undone. They've caulked most of the holes and cracks, and that seems to be helping more than the exterminator bro anyway. So whatever. I'm still seeing a reduction in pests. Just kind of wish I'd realized they were useless from day one, so I could have handled the war efforts differently. Story 21. Unfortunately, it wasn't immediately. Growing up, I had horrible cramps during my period. I was suspecting something like endometriosis or something else. Like these were grueling, crying, throwing up, and passing out cramps. So I went to the Navy doctor and she barely listened to my concerns and simply prescribed birth control. At 18, I thought, well, okay, at least it'll stop the pain. Then at 20, I went and saw a doctor, and they told me I had a cyst that if it wasn't taken care of, I would be infertile. My new benefits kick in next month, so I'll be booking an appointment ASAP. But if I find out I have a condition that could have been prevented if the doctor had taken some time to listen to my concerns instead of slapping on a birth control band-aid, I'm thinking of bringing a lawsuit. I feel like in every thread about medical professionals ever, there is guaranteed to be a post about a woman's abdominal cramps not being taken seriously. And look, here it is again. Absolutely baffling that the professionals just don't take a little extra time to make sure. Even if they're confident, they should at least acknowledge they could be wrong. Is it like an ego thing or a pride thing? I don't know. I don't know what it could be. Like, yeah, you could be right that it's nothing, but just check. These are lives you're playing with here. Story 22. About a month ago, I rented a car through Avis. Did everything online, paid for it right then, figured I was ready to make a 12-hour road trip with my younger brother. Get to the pickup and they have to put my card on file on site in case of any damages. Cool, no problem. Except my card only had like a couple $100 on it at the time. So the guy denied me my car I had already paid for. All right, whatever, we can put it on my brother's card, right? No big deal. Just swap the reservation in his name. He's over 25 and it's already paid for. Nope, can't do that. Have to cancel the reservation and do it from scratch in his name. Oh wait, we can't do that either, because there are no available vehicles, since I rented the last one, and canceling it doesn't put it back in their system. Doesn't matter the car's literally 20 feet away and already paid for, you have to call customer service. So I call customer service and naturally I get some guy in India who barely speaks English, but somehow his name is David. Oh, and he hangs up on me when I ask for a supervisor, after he explains that he can't reserve the car since it has already been reserved by me. First time I've ever cussed somebody out face to face like I did, and I finally managed to get it canceled and reserved again. Except now, the rate isn't the same and it costs twice as much on my brother's card. It's been a month and I still haven't been refunded the $100 that was supposed to take 3 to 5 business days from my initial reservation. So yeah, I know which rental company I'll never be using again. I've never had to rent a car before, but now I know which one I'll never use again as well. Or for the first time, I guess. Thanks for the shout out, OP. And honestly, good. I didn't know how to say their name properly anyway. Avis, Avi, I don't know. Story 24. I was at an initial appointment with a new primary care doctor because my old primary care doctor had turned her practice into a boutique practice and stopped accepting insurance. In the course of the getting to know you banter, the new primary care doctor decided that I'd used a word incorrectly. He literally said, "You're using that word incorrectly." When he stepped out, I pulled up Merriam-Webster.com, wrote down the literal definition of the word I'd used that was in alignment with my usage of it, and bounced. Found a new primary care doctor and never returned. Also, even if I had used the word incorrectly, I don't see how it helps to build doctor-patient relations to point it out. Maybe the visit should be about my, healthcare, not some dude trying to prove he's smarter than me. Story 24. I was looking for a new doctor and found one to visit who oddly had an appointment available almost immediately. Went in, talked to her, mentioned how I felt I had gained a little weight and wanted my thyroid tested because of family history. She spent the next 20 minutes describing her daily routine, where she constantly thinks about every bite of food and the amount of calories that pass her lips. Over and over. I wasn't looking for weight loss advice. I wasn't even overweight. I just wanted a blood test run. Googled her later. Apparently this was a common thing, and she had poor ratings from other patients. Never went back. So this doctor clearly has an eating disorder. And as such, as much as I kind of want to bash her for being a crappy doctor, I'm not going to. Instead, I just hope that she gets the help she needs for her own stuff, because that is also a medical thing that needs to be treated. Eating disorders are serious business. They can really affect people, as is evident here. Story 25. My old doctor was really judgmental and just kind of creepy. Had that sort of Scrat from Ice Age look in his eye, where one was kind of squinted and twitchy. He would comment on personal stuff that had nothing to do with my appointment or even my health, like telling me my choice in studies was crap and that I should study for a real job. I'd wanted to study psychology and perhaps become a therapist, but never ended up going to uni for unrelated reasons. He also kept judging me for bringing my mom in with me every time since I was 18, but that should also be my choice. I get anxiety and having her there helps me relax. And she also remembers things that I would otherwise forget to mention, so I just like having her there. Overall, he just had really bad bedside manner. And though he was actually good at doing stuff, I really just couldn't stand him. Judgmental and creepy is a bad look in a profession that requires a kind of relationship. you know? Like, there is a level of trust that has to be there for patient and doctor to work together. If I am creeped out by my GP, I'm not gonna wanna tell them things. I'm not gonna trust that person, and as such, they can't do their job, so that's not a working relationship in my mind. I hope your new doctor is leagues better, OP. Well, really, I hope anyone who talked about doctors in this thread has a better doctor now. Because, man, first of all, there were a lot of them, which kind of makes sense. If there's a profession you can really lose trust in, it's definitely the medical one. But there are good doctors and stuff out there, so keep looking, everybody. Find one that suits your needs and is just good to you. Also, I understand there's a big shortage right now, especially in Canada, so that's not always possible, but best of luck. For now, though, that's all the stories we have for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I also hope you have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are. I will see you all in the next one.